So I was in the grocery store the other day and I bought a package of strawberries. And when I got home, I realized that it had a kosher symbol on it that I didn't recognize. Hi everybody, this is Ruvain Spolter from Kitah.org with our weekly Parshat lesson. And I'd like to use this episode that happened to be with the strawberries to talk about not just how do we keep kosher, but how do we teach our children about keeping kosher? Because if we think about it, keeping kosher today, even if you're familiar with the rules and you were raised and you know what to do in your home, keeping kosher today is somewhat challenging because of the many, many kosher symbols out there. It's very difficult to know what do we accept, what's not acceptable, and it can become very challenging. And I thought about this in light of a pasuk that we see, a language that we see, and a Rashi from Parshat Shemini. In Parshat Shemini, we not only learn about the kosher symbols, of what makes an animal kosher and not kosher, but we also learn about how Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Jewish people about how to keep kosher. And that's really interesting. Let's look at the psukim. If we look at Vayikra, Perek Yud Aleph, chapter 11, the very first psukim, the Torah tells us, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aharon le'mor alehem. Hashem said to Moshe and Aaron, say to them, go tell the Jewish people, Dabru el b'nei Yisrael le'mor. Speak to the Jewish people saying, Zot hachaya asher tochlu, mikol ha'behema asher la'aretz. This is the living animal that you should eat from all of the animals that are on the earth. And what are the animals? And then he starts telling them about specific animals. Kol mafreset parsa, mishosat shesa prasot. It has to have split hooves. Shosat shesa, there's another way of saying split hooves, are the prasot of the hooves. And ma'aleh geira ba'behema, it also has to ma'aleh, bring up its cud, ma'aleh geira, choose its cud, ba'behema, and animals, ota tochelu, that you can eat. So what animals do we eat, as we all know? Animals that have what we call split hooves at the bottom, their hoofs are split, and they chew their cud. And that's a symbol of kosher animals. But Rashi says something really interesting. Rashi, based on the Midrash and the Gemara, says that Moshe Rabbeinu was told to say to them, Zot hachaya, this is the animal. What does it mean, zot? Zot usually means something specific. So look at Rashi says, such a beautiful idea. Zot hachaya, milame, this teaches us, shahaya Moshe ochez bachaya, Moshe Rabbeinu literally would hold the animal, umare ota li Yisrael, and show it to the Jewish people. Zot tochlu, this you could eat. He would pick up a sheep and say, this you could eat. And then he'd pick up, a camel and say, I don't know if he'd pick up a camel and say, v'zot lo tochlu, and this you can't eat. Meaning, it wasn't enough to tell them you can have a sheep and you can't have a camel. Moshe Rabbeinu had to show them, et zet tochlu, this you can eat. Af b'shirtzei hamayim. Even the same thing is true of the different shratzim, the corally things in the water. Achaz mikol min v'amin. He took each specific species, v'her'ah and he showed them. He took a crab and he said, no crabs. Took an eel, no eel. V'chein ba'of, and he did it with the birds as well. V'chein b'shratzim, and he did it also with the other creepy crawly things on the ground. And I think this is such a beautiful idea of showing. This is something that we try to do very often in the lessons that I do, that many times we, our children also, but we're also visual learners. It's not enough to say, oh, we follow this and that. We have to show our children what we're doing, exactly how we're keeping kosher, exactly what symbols we can see, we do use, and the ones that we don't. Of course, the word simanim, sign, is really interesting in this case because simanim, in the context of the Torah, is signs of a kosher animal. But for today, the signs and the symbols that we use, it's much more confusing. There are hundreds of kosher symbols and organizations around the world. And while we'd love to say that all of them are wonderful and acceptable, reality is that's not true. And it's very complicated and very confusing. So it's really important, especially as our children get older and go out into the world, that they not only come home and see, oh, this symbol or that symbol, they see the food that we eat, but we take them shopping. We say, see this is what I eat and this is what I don't. And I'm not suggesting each person has to talk to their rabbi and in their community and make their choices and their standards. But like Moshe Rabbeinu, if we show them and they see it, and they see that we are careful and that we're choosing carefully, that's the most important and best lesson we can teach our children about keeping kosher. Have a Shabbat Shalom.